Welcome to the Texas Conflict Coach radio program. If you've ever experienced or engaged in destructive or unresolved conflict, then you know it leads to broken relationships, distrust, and damaging results. Our program will help you manage and resolve conflict effectively with strategies, valuable resources, and support. Since 2009, our radio program hosted guest experts from around the globe sharing their perspectives, experiences, and expertise while giving you food for thought. If you can't listen live, then download and listen to any of our 300-plus podcasts in our library at texasconflictcoach.com. So sit back, relax, or join the conversation every Tuesday evening, or tweet us at TXConflictCoach.
Welcome, everyone. This is Zina Zumeta, your guest host. Our program today is Refusing to Be Enemies, the Zeitouna story. Zeitouna is Arabic for olive tree or olive. In the summer of 2002, a unique sisterhood was born in Ann Arbor, Michigan, comprised of 6 Arab and 6 Jewish women. Naming themselves Zeitouna, they unknowingly embarked on a life-changing journey, both personal and socio-political. Committing to learn to hear each voice in the group has permanently joined them across the divide of their ancestral communities. Zeitouna's mission is to embody and promote the peaceful and just coexistence of the Arab and Jewish peoples through connection, trust, empathy, and actions focused on supporting a sustainable future for both Palestine and Israel. Joining me tonight are 3 members of the group. Huda Karaman Rosen is a Palestinian living in America since 1962, an advocate for social justice and peace efforts, retired from the healthcare and education fields, and co-founder of Bustan, al-Funun, Foundation for Arab Arts in America. She has been involved in mediation and conflict resolution since 2008. Lori White is a filmmaker, mediator, psychotherapist, community organizer, yoga practitioner, and singer-songwriter. She says she was privileged to be entrusted with documenting the Zeitouna's evolution in her film, Refusing to Be Enemies, the Zeitouna story. Huda Karaman was born and raised in Nablus, Palestine, and immigrated to the U.S. in 1968. She is active in efforts that focus on crossing divides and building bridges. Huda co-founded Bustan al-Funun to support Arab Arts in America. She is a member of the Senate of the University Musical Society and is past president of the Board of Directors of Access, an Arab American social service agency. Huda is a strategic business and marketing consultant. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Delighted to have you. So, Huda, can you tell me what Zeitouna is?
Yes. Well, Zeitouna is a group of 12 women, 6 Palestinian and 6 Jewish women, who got together in 2002, 12 years ago, to really talk and learn about each other and cross the divide, as we say, and share our narratives, share our stories, get to know more about each other, and, to talk. We use dialogue. We started with our stories and slowly progressed to deeper issues, and we meet every other week in our homes. We rotate homes, and we socialize for half an hour, and then we have a regular meeting. We usually have an agenda, a scribe, a facilitator, and we sometimes have topics to discuss, and sometimes we just talk about business, take care of business, and then move on to other things. But it's been an amazing trip so far.
Well, the fact that you've been together for 12 years is amazing also.
Well, we also are finding that we're we're very different. Even the Palestinian women, each has a different narrative, and the Jewish women, each is so different from the other. And this is what keeps it interesting. There isn't just one face to a Palestinian woman or one face. And that's the beauty of it.
Oh, that is beautiful. Well, Deb, can you talk about why Zeitouna came together?
When we came together at the very beginning, it was for a particular reason. And over time, as we grew into the women we are today, staying together kind of changed. So initially when we came together, it was the time of the Second Intifada, which is the uprising, the Palestinian uprising, and that was very brutal. It was also 2002 was following 2001, September, where the whole Arab American community was being targeted as the other. So when we came together, all the women had a particular interest in joining hands to try and figure out how can we carry on a conversation that goes beyond, hi, I'm Palestinian, hi, I'm Jewish. So some of the Jewish women have said that this is a very painful cause for them, but the pain involved in it made it impossible for them to do something about it. So they would be engaged in every social justice issue, from civil rights on, but when it came to Israel-Palestine, it was too painful, so they stayed away from that. Some of the Palestinians have never met a Jew other than a settler or a soldier, and so they wanted to be in a room where there are human Jews, not just soldier Jews and settler Jews. I, for one, joined because I was very angry at what was happening in the Second Intifada, and I found myself becoming hateful and angry and forgetting everything that I've learned about Zionism and Judaism and Jews and all that. So my anger was taking over, and I knew that I was a better person than that, and I wanted to be a better person than that. And the only way I could figure out to change that is to meet up and begin relationships with Jews so that I do not drown in my own hatred. Others were there because we have worked so hard over the years to provide a voice, this is from the Palestinian perspective, to provide voice for the Palestinians. But every time we engaged in that, it became a battle in whatever room we're in. People throwing chairs at one another, screaming and yelling, and that was getting us nowhere. And there were a few women who had children in Israel. One of them had her daughter married to a Palestinian Muslim. And so the pain was very personal. It wasn't just tribal. And so this is what brought us all together. But I think at the core of it, and that's what kept us together, is that we all knew at some level we wanted to put a human face on the other. Because as long as we're separated, and as long as we refer to one another as the other, we would go nowhere. Because then we dehumanize one another. So I think we knew at the gut level that that's what the reason, even though we all said the immediate reason was this is enough.
So a real desire to meet people on a very human level and to understand yourselves and each other at that deep level, it sounds like.
Absolutely. Because that's normally what happens. It's when we isolate people and make them the other, it's easy to dismiss them. It's easy to dismiss their humanity. It's easy to destroy them. Historically, we've seen that throughout history. And these 12 women, at some level, knew this. And we knew that what will save us each individually in order to do something to make this world a better place is to actually see one another as human beings and begin relationships.
Wow. And it sounds like you were also looking at for yourself to go deep within yourselves, not just across the divide.
That is correct. I remember in the very first meeting when we were going around the room and saying, why are you in this room? I had said that there is a divide between my brain and my heart. That my brain was telling me something that it's okay and you can deal with this and rationalize, but my heart was scared and hateful and all of this. And I keep using this word to describe myself is I know better. I know better. I just need to bridge from the heart to the brain. So all in all, it's really bridging within and without.
Wow. Wow. Very profound. Lori, I have several questions that I want to ask you, and let me just do it one at a time. First of all, why is it only women?
Well, I think that we were really interested in finding the way to be successful, and many of us had been in other groups of different kinds and noticed that when men were present, that sometimes they tended to sort of take over, and we wanted to maximize our chances of bringing women's voices forward. And we thought that women have a particular role to play in peacemaking, in having our voices heard, and so that was one of the main reasons. And also we decided on 12 because we wanted to fit comfortably in each other's homes and have another opportunity to have everybody have a chance to talk within a given evening. And so that's why we also didn't let the group get larger than that. We wanted, to keep it intimate. And
yeah. Well, and so the other question I wanted to ask you is about process. Is there a specific process that your group uses?
Well, we decided that dialogue, kind of with a capital D, was a really useful process for us. And dialogue is different than discussion or debate. The principles of dialogue involve active listening, really listening. I had a woman once say, my grandmother said we were born with 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we would listen twice as much as we speak. And I thought that's a good way to think about it. Also, suspending judgment, identifying assumptions, which has been a particular use in our group because we tend to make all kinds of assumptions about people that we don't know. Inquiry and reflection, and then taking personal responsibility for the process. Those are all principles of intentional dialogue. And dialogue, the way that it contrasts with discussion or debate is dialogue is about my perspective and yours, not mine or yours. And dialogue attempts to create a fuller picture of reality rather than breaking it down into parts. So really looking at the whole thing. Dialogue is not about winning. It's about learning and collaboration and a synthesis of points of view. And in order to dialogue, we had to learn to slow down the speed of the conversation. Dialogue is open-ended, and it's not one of the things that we often say is expect and accept non-closure. And therefore, when you do that, it promotes letting go of the need for results. That it's really about learning.
So Huda mentioned that there's a facilitator. Is that correct?
We facilitate from within the group. We rotate the job of a facilitator as well as the scribe, and then as well as rotating from home to home. And Huda mentioned that we socialize, but she forgot to mention one of the things that I think is a very strong glue to our group, which is that we eat together each meeting, and we have a bunch of fantastic cooks in this group. So we always have a really wonderful meal together. And there's something really profound about breaking bread with people. It means that you take them into your heart in a different way. I think that's I think there's even been studies that show that that's one of the ways to kind of lower the barriers to others. We associate eating with people and being in people's homes.
That's great.
That we're when we're together in those kind of ways, we associate the other people as part of our family. And indeed, we are part of the same human family.
Wonderful. Well, how long are your meetings then?
We start at 7 and we go till 9:30. And then usually, so the first half an hour is the eating, socializing piece, and then we try to get started at 7:30 and end at 9:30. And then usually there's kind of a soft ending for the last half hour where continue talking, visiting a little bit, and cleaning up, and often. So, but officially, our meeting is 7:30 to 9:30, with a half hour at the beginning for socializing.
Wow. It sounds like a lot goes on in a very short period of time.
And we meet every other week, and we've been doing this for 12 years. And how many people can you think of that you get together with every other week for a chunk of time to really listen and really be present with? It's a really profound connection that develops over that kind of time. We originally thought we were just going to meet once a month, but we quickly realized that wasn't enough. We were just, eager to be together more than that. We needed to be together more than that.
Wow. So how many of that original group are still with you?
I believe there are 7 of us that started at the beginning, and then we've had 5 additional people who have come, and for different reasons, people have left when their lives changed or they moved or things like that. Right. And they're still all Emerita, Zeitouna. Sometimes they come.
So they can come back. That's wonderful, wonderful. Well, I would like to find out from each of you, if I could, a little bit more personal things. So, if you would be willing to talk about what your personal experience has been over the last 12 years, and Dad, would you be willing to start?
Sure. When we first started, we kept talking about, we were lucky enough to have at least one person, probably 2, Lori is one of them, but one person who knew what dialogue is and guided us through it. And I remember her talking about transformation. If we transform the conversation, we can transform ourselves, we can transform the conflict. And I'm thinking, wow, this sounds really good. I had no idea what transformation is in this context. So, but I signed up. In my heart, I signed up, I'll go with this. But what I realized is that to really get the most out of dialogue, you have to be open. You have what I call give yourself into the process. Because if you do not, if you go in for a lovely conversation and fantastic company, you'll get something out of that, but it's not what is intended. And I found myself willing to do that, to open my heart, to truly listen to this person across from me who is supposed to be, by all definitions, by most definitions, not all, an enemy in the context of Israel-Palestine. And so when you sit back and they say something that doesn't fit well with me, when they claim that they're Zionist or they say I'm Zionist, as a Palestinian, I hear that as I am your enemy. And so, I would feel myself kind of the air stuck in my chest, and you take a deep breath. And Lori said one of these things is we have to examine our assumptions. And in the past, what I used to say is, it's them trying to tell me something. Within Zeitouna, and the experience that I got is, ask the question, why am I reacting this way? So I take the responsibility for why am I reacting to that. And that's all part of the transformation that I have come to appreciate about participating fully in this dialogue. And what I found out, this is something that since you asked for personal stuff, is all my life I've had this struggle between being spiritual and religious, and then rejecting all of this. Well, I still am rejecting religious, but what I found is when you open your heart, a lot of times you can't control what goes in. Yeah, it's a loving gesture. And when you open for love, a lot of things come through. And what came through for me is an acceptance and reconciliation with my society. And I looked at this and I said, my God, this was not the intention of Zeitouna for me. I wanted to go and put a human face to the other, but for me personally. But so I, in many ways, view the dialogue process, if you truly engage in it, as a spiritual exercise, because you have to involve the heart, the brain, and whatever's in between. And so for me, that I would say is the most profound thing that is personal. That is not, in addition to truly clarifying in my mind, and I have no doubt whatsoever, what I consider the source of my pain. I am so clear on the fact that the Jew is not my enemy. And I have more in common with the Jewish women than I ever thought that I would have. And so what happens is we created, when we talk about sisterhood, what was created is a community of people who share values. And when it comes to Israel and Palestine, we may have our differences, but we are committed to expand our values to find our way through this model called Israel and Palestine.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Well, let me just remind everyone that you are listening to the Texas Conflict Coach Blog Talk radio program, and we are talking today about refusing to be enemies, the Zeitouna story. So with that was beautiful. Huda, would you be willing to talk about your own personal experience?
Yes. It's gradual, as Huda was talking about. There is this transformation, but I specifically found it very helpful in two areas. One thing, historically, I always used to read about the Holocaust and the experience of the Jews in Europe and so on, and say, well, we had nothing to do with that. The Palestinians did not cause their pain, and this is not my problem, and so on. And I found that through really talking and seeing the pain that, especially we have one sister who has been incarcerated and survived the Holocaust, Irene. Wow. And so I just felt that, oh my God, it is my concern because it is a human tragedy, and I, as a human being, need to be concerned about that as much as any human tragedies happening today in the Middle East. That's my concern because we are part of this human circle. And it also helped me in the being with Zeitouna, a process like, because I go home, I'm from Haifa, and I hold an Israeli passport and an American passport. And I go visit my family almost every year and so on. And it makes me really look at what is going on there with a different set of glasses. It's like the Zeitouna glasses I take with me. And I look at how ridiculous the situation is becoming and how much it is, how anti-Zeitouna, the whole process of division that is occurring there, the lines, the Arabs on one side, the Palestinians and the Jews on the other, and it is all a very corrosive, I find, and ugly situation where you are creating these divisions and bridges and separations that we in Zeitouna are definitely have definitely been successful in removing and going beyond that, and it makes me really sometimes get very angry there and more determined to come back and make sure we do not create these divisions amongst ourselves. that are being created over there.
Well, and one of the things that you talked about is how within Zeitouna you really are speaking human to human, and what strikes me is that in Israel and Palestine, people are actively trying to dehumanize each other.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. I see the dehumanization that occurs there, and to me, it just becomes where if you are respecting me, looking at me as a human being, and valuing my needs as that human being, my rights, and what I'm all about, then you and I have a common language. I don't care where you're from or what you're all about.
Wow, that's beautiful. So, Lori, are you willing to talk about your personal experience?
Sure. There's so much to say, and I'm trying to think of how to say it in a concise way. I was one of the people that Dad referenced at the beginning of the show, that was a Jew who spent my life being active on all kinds of causes of social justice, from civil rights to the women's movement to Latin America to, you sort of, you name it, race dialogue, etc. And but it was always too painful for me to be involved in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict stuff, because it seemed like it just was so polarizing. And as a child of divorce, I just couldn't stomach that kind of conflict. I mean, just emotionally, it just was just horrible for me to be around that kind of conflict. But I also felt sick about what I knew was happening there. And when I went to Israel, one of the sort of precursor to the birthright type of trip, I went when I was 16. And I, having grown up in Flint, Michigan, and went to a high school that was 75% African American, right away I saw that what was going on there was a two-tiered society, and where there were second-class citizens, and the Palestinians, who then were called Arab Israelis or whatever, were being treated quite differently than the Jews, than the Jews were treated, and that just astounded me and shocked me and upset me. And when I came back and heard that tried to talk to people about it, they minimized it. And so I basically didn't really touch the issue until after 9/11, when I think the Zeitounas have heard me tell this story many times. When I saw that second plane go through the building on 9/11, I said, oh no, please don't let this be about the Middle East. But I knew it was. Wow. Just in my heart, I'd been waiting for that other shoe to drop. And then I didn't feel like I couldn't any longer step aside. I had to find a way to engage. And I was so happy that I found a group of people who were similarly interested in creating this human connection and in opening this space for us to be fully there with each other. And it wasn't easy, and there was a lot of pain and a lot of fear. But I think that over the course of the years, I feel so blessed that I've had this opportunity to, first of all, to know all these women who, have become like sisters to me, and I don't have any sisters of my own, so I feel really lucky that I have these sisters of choice. But also, it's made me much more able to speak truth to power, sort of in the, in parts of the Jewish community that I need to talk to, and to speak in other places, and to help present the story of the Palestinian people that I know, and to make sure that their voices get amplified and heard. That was, I think, one of the big reasons I wanted to I wanted to make the movie was to make sure that I could put those voices in front of more people. So that was really important to me. But I guess I got a little off track. But I think it's been, personally one of the most fulfilling things I've ever been part of, and still is one of the central things in my life.
So that's really amazing to go from Flint, Michigan, and then to Israel, and to feel like you're seeing the same things happening, and then to come back and try to do something about it. So, I do want to mention that the movie is just totally beautiful. So, any of you listening who are able to get hold of the Zeitouna Refusing to Be Enemies video, it really is worthwhile to watch. And Lori, one of the things that you mentioned was the difficulty of groups like that, of being in groups like that. And I know that many groups fail, and yours has gone for 12 years now. Why do you think that is?
I think some of it is luck. I think to some extent it was the right group of people at the right time with a lot of willingness and commitment and dedication. So I think that's a piece of it. I think the fact that we decided to use dialogue and really have worked at getting better at the dialogue process, that's another piece of it. I'm trying to think what else. I would be interested in Huda and Wadad weighing in terms of what some of their thoughts are about that.
I think, this is Wadad, I think one of the areas that made it also successful is very early on we realized that we cannot represent our tribe. I cannot speak for Palestinians. I cannot speak for more than one Palestinian, and that's me. So once we freed ourselves from having the responsibility to present the point of view of our people, we gained the freedom to dig deeper. And I think that contributed a lot to the success of Zeitouna. The other thing is that I wanted to mention a bit earlier is refusing to be enemies is a word that sometimes is used lightly, just like dialogue is used lightly. People don't so they think that if a Palestinian is talking to an Israeli or to a Jew, they have refused to be enemies. In Zeitouna, it's work. This is how we work. This is what we deal with, is things around us happen within our tribes, within that keep reminding us that we ought to be on different sides, and yet we're not. And it got to the point within Zeitouna that the disagreements are not across tribal lines. So it's not like all the Palestinians agree and all the Jews are on one side. It became people who are looking at an issue that affects our heart and affects our lives and affects our families, affects the world we want to have. And we engage in trying to find ways to participate in making it better.
Wow. Beautiful.
I'm going to jump in and go back just to a little bit to what made it, how come we're still going after all these years.
Yeah.
And again, Lori mentioned dialogue, and that the fact that it really teaches you to listen, and it really teaches you to slow down. And for me, as a person who is so impatient and always wants to jump in and say what's right there in my mind, I have to say it, it just made me bite my tongue and really slow down and take what was just said and really ponder it a little bit and digest it. And I find then I see much more into that person's soul than just answering quickly, on what's there. that I feel is very important, and many people don't allow for that process. And then I will jump. No, that's it. I think that's enough, because I really feel that with what Lori and with that said, and keeping to the process, having a facilitator, having an agenda, having someone scribing. I think these sound like a little maybe cold for it, but if we don't keep that up, I think like the minutes or writing what. For the people who miss a meeting, they don't feel that there's a disconnection. They jump right back in, and they're there. And that way we keep the cohesiveness of our 12 together, so that if I go overseas for 2 months and I come back, I don't feel like I missed anything, because I've been reading the minutes and knowing how the meetings are going on.
Wow.
May I add one else? One of the things we also did is we had to define for our group dynamics a set of principles to guide, a set of guidelines and one of them, for instance, which is usually in groups. I think Lori very early on when you asked her the question about why women, and she said something about when men are there, they tend to take over the conversation, is to attend to the minority voice. So if you're sitting in the group and somebody, and we're all in agreement, it's very scary for the person who sees it differently to speak up. And so what we have is we've created a safe environment that tends to that voice, so that it is safe for you to come and say something that is different than what everybody. Because if you look at Israel-Palestine and how we're all involved and how we dehumanize one another, and not just Israel-Palestine, but all conflicts, there's that element of fear. And what we do, we don't feel safe. We're fearful. And so we just attack. And in Zeitouna, we have managed, and from the early on, we said we're going to have to create a safe space and show respect for one another, that attend to the minority voices as well.
Well, that safety explains a lot about why the group is still together. Yeah, that's really important. I'm wondering how the events of this past summer affected the group. I don't know if you'd be willing to talk about that.
Yeah. Yes, can I start?
Sure.
Okay. I was overseas. I was home. I was in Haifa when all this was going on. And it was a very painful and hot and ugly summer. And as you know, so I wasn't here. I wasn't meeting. I didn't have that. But at the same time, when I'd see the bombing and the killing and the ugliness and all the horror that was going on in Gaza and the pain I was feeling, I knew that my Zeitouna sisters are feeling that pain. And I felt that my Jewish sisters in the group were feeling that pain doubly. And I heard for them too, because I knew that how they felt about this. And I knew that to them, a lot of what's going on there that's ugly is against what they believe in, but it's being done in their name, so to speak. And yet it is really not in their name.
Wow.
So
well, I would certainly echo that. It was very reassuring and helpful to me. I know one time while all of the bombing and various things were going on, that I was just feeling just kind of paralyzed and shriveled up inside, and that I was afraid to talk about my pain, because somehow I felt like, as someone who was a Jew, that it was other people who were Jews, who were the Israeli government, that was the perpetrator of this, and and people who belonged to the group that were the target of this, they had the right to be in pain, but I didn't. But it was, with Ed who actually said to me, no, you have the right to your feelings, and I really empathize with your position, and must be really heartbreaking for you, and which it was, and that it meant so much to me. I mean, this happens every time there's one of these things that it's very, very difficult to know what to do and what to say, but at least I feel like within Zeitouna I gather the strength to go on and to keep speaking out and to talk to the people in my sphere and to say, and as Huda was saying, to say, do not do this in my name, and this is not, Jewish behavior in terms of what I learned as Jewish values. This is not the way that it makes sense to believe, or my human values. This is not a way to behave. But the point being is that a lot of times when these things have been going on, it's easier often for us in Zeitouna to talk with each other than it is to talk within our respective, ancestral communities, because those communities are so triggered and they get so polarized that it's really difficult to feel like that one has support in that situation.
So even in the midst of this, talking to people from your own background becomes more difficult than talking to people in Zeitouna is easier. How interesting.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, too, is I personally had no doubt whatsoever that Zeitouna as a group would not be affected. And I was personally in a very bad shape because it just overwhelmed me, with family over there, but it's just, I just couldn't believe what is happening. It just was And then, but what made things better is we were on the phone. I was on the phone with Lori, or on the phone with other women when it was not meeting, and we said we probably need to have more meetings to get together about it. So Zeitouna is so solid that none of these things affect. What happens is the opposite, because we're all, as we said at the very beginning, we are committed to engagement. During the midst of this whole thing, this Gaza thing, the Beth Israel congregation, the synagogue, they're having a small dialogue group within themselves to try and understand, prepare themselves to hear something they don't like to hear. So if you want to hear about the independence of the state of Israel, the other side of it is the Nakba, which is the catastrophe of what happened to the Palestinians. They're so intertwined, you cannot learn one and not acknowledge the other. And so, so in the second or third meeting, I had a chance. I didn't have to go, but because it was in the middle of the battle, in the middle of this and that, and I heard my voice saying, not only will you not disengage, but I couldn't disengage. It was so important to engage because this, and we didn't talk about Gaza, it was about different topics, but it was very important to engage. And that is, if there's anything I would say to anybody in this world, is just do not disengage. There is so much around us that we have to be part of it, and we are part of it, so we do have to engage in making our world a better place.
So the support of Zeitouna really allowed you to engage in ways that you might have not had the stamina to do otherwise.
That's correct. That's correct.
Wow, that's really beautiful. Well, I know that at the end of each program, we ask you to advise listeners what they could do if they're interested in this topic, if they would like to take a next step. And I'm wondering if you could make some suggestions to our listeners.
Anyone else start?
Oh, well, I would say take every chance to really reach out and across these divisions, and you might be surprised as the friendships and so on that you might, just by listening and talking and explaining how things are. Also, we have a few books that are easy to read and can give someone who is not really very familiar with the whole Middle Eastern situation and what happened in 1948 and with the creation of Israel, what happened to the Palestinians, the Nakba, how so many of them were homeless and their villages destroyed and so on. There's one book in particular that's easy read, is The Lemon Tree by Sandy Tolan. So I would
It's a beautiful book.
Beautiful book. Yeah, and the Refusing to Be Enemies, the Zeitouna story, I think gives also a little bit of explanations about the whole issue.
And I know that you've indicated a website as well, www.traubman.igc.org, and that's, of course, on the website for Texas Conflict Coach as well. I can't thank all of you enough for coming on the program and for talking, but I'm wondering if each of you would be willing to just say one final word, give one final message to our listeners. Wadad, do you want to start?
I would say is face your fear for Israel-Palestine. Neither people is going anywhere, so do not be afraid that those people are going to be thrown in the desert or they're thrown in the sea. Put your fear aside, work with it, and engage to try and find a home for both of those people to share.
Beautiful. And Lori?
And I would say not only with the Israel-Palestine situation, but with all of the situations where you feel fear, use the fear as sort of an arrow for where your power is, and go toward those situations that you feel afraid of, and make connections with those other human beings who always have more in common with you than not. It's like there's a saying that an enemy is just someone's story you haven't heard yet.
Beautiful. And Huda?
I would just second that and say really believe in the humanity of the other, be it in Gaza where all this, or Ferguson, Missouri. Really, we are all one, and if the other is hurting, in a way, it is diminishing me. Listen to the other, and do not be afraid to reach across the divide.
Well, thank you so much. This is really beautiful. So everyone, web page is www.refusingtobeenemies.org and www.traubman.igc.org. There is an email address for Lori White. It's Lori White at EYEDream1world.com, and one is the numeral. So Lori White at idreamoneworld.com. And thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Really good. Thank you so much, Dina.
Thank you for listening to the Texas Conflict Coach. We hope you've enjoyed the program. You can find over 300 podcasts archived to listen at your own convenience at texasconflictcoach.com or download the podcast at iTunes or Stitcher Radio. To learn about upcoming radio programs and resources, sign up for our monthly e-newsletter.